I'm going to start out with a brief introduction to Egyptian culture, and then we'll dive right into 3 very full days of Egyptian art. I'll come back to this slide, but let me just start out by acknowledging that we are covering a long period, as you probably gathered from your long study guide, and we won't even be delving into Egypt under Persian, Greek, and Roman rule, at least for now. To put that in perspective, 2,500 years pretty much covers the rest of this course. We will go from here to here to here to here, and at that point we still have 100 years or so to go. Meanwhile, in Egypt, we will go over the same period of time from here to here to here. This doesn't mean that Egypt was static all this time. Indeed, it alternated between periods of stable, centralized kingly rule and periodic disruptive invasions by outsiders. So, which of these dates do you need to keep straight? I wish I could say none, but the AP test will sometimes require you to give dates. So for now, let's keep it simple. Think of Old Kingdom as the 2000s, BCE, that is. It's also the age of the Great Pyramid, so if the question is asking you about pyramids, it is asking about the Old Kingdom. Pyramids may, in fact, have brought the Old Kingdom down. I have a candidate for an AP question. It will never be asked on an AP exam, but the question is not how did art reflect culture? You'll see that. How did art support culture? You might see that. But how did art destroy culture? Contrary to myth, slaves did not build the pyramids. These were huge public works projects, and they cost a great deal of money. So increasingly, pharaohs had to rely on regional governors or nomarchs to recruit and assemble a workforce. Eventually, the nomarchs gained control and central control broke down. Note that the Middle Kingdom did not build pyramids. It was a time of major military expansion, and they built splendid fortifications, which we won't study. In fact, you will encounter no images from the Middle Kingdom in this course. Whew, that's 500 years we can write off. So leaving aside pyramids versus temples, why does Egyptian culture show such remarkable stability? Well, the map gives us some clues. The Nile is the longest river in the world, but the Nile Valley itself is just a few miles wide on either side. Anyone who wants to rule Egypt has to impose rule over a much bigger area than Mesopotamian city-states, that is in terms of sheer acreage. But that ruler also has easy access to those people through a very navigable river. Both of these realities create an incentive for, and indeed make possible, a more centralized administrative state. The Nile also floods predictably. This is not the Tigris and Euphrates, which flood irregularly and constantly change course. Life is less unpredictable, less changeable in Egypt, yet it is highly cyclical. There's the flood and the receding of the flood. As we will see, Egyptian religion and politics worship the unchanging and the linear. In some ways, their history is itself in the shape of the Nile, but they also focus on the cycle of life, death, and above all, rebirth into the afterlife. It's hard to invade through a desert, so Egypt was not as subject to invasion as Mesopotamia, although it was successfully conquered a few times. Again, this gave Egyptian culture a greater sense of security and longevity. Interestingly, most of the invaders from outside quickly became more Egyptian than the Egyptians. Cleopatra, for example, was really Greek. The good news is that you don't have to keep a lot of non-Egyptian influences straight. Just one further source of confusion, which the map should help clear up. Lower Egypt is north, Upper Egypt is south, which makes sense when you think that the Nile flows toward the Mediterranean or flows from south to north. The two kingdoms were unified around 3100 BCE, which is when our story really starts with the Palette of Narmer. Old Kingdom authority centered in Lower Egypt with its capital at Memphis. New Kingdom centered in Upper Egypt, and its capital was Thebes. At the heart of Egyptian ideology, politics, and culture is the pharaoh, a ruler who placates the gods, who petitions the gods, and eventually who becomes a god. But he can't do whatever he wants, as we'll see when we get to a pharaoh who tried. Most accepted their responsibility to maintain ma'at, a term that means right order and harmony in the universe. Pharaohs brought ma'at to their kingdoms and people, but they were also subject to ma'at. This New Kingdom poem sums up the pharaoh's role. He is sent by the gods Without him, the people would suffer and die. No wonder they serve him in life and afterwards. Now on to Egyptian